Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's Matthew Rice here for the Dorklords. I've got my awesome friend of many years with me here, David Dalt. Dave, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be with you and with you, Matthew, as well.
Yes, we know each other back from high school. And actually, we're here at Dave's awesome studio, which just totally trumps the Dorklords hanging out with a bunch of crap on the back wall. So, yay! We've elevated ourselves.
Yeah, and so out of this studio, I produce a couple of radio shows and a couple of podcasts, and I'm a kind of an audio engineer for hire. But I'm today happy to let the studio be here for the use of this very important conversation.
Things not seen.
Yep.
I mean, you're humbling yourself here, but you've been doing some amazing work for a number of years. So.
I have been talking to a lot of people, and they have been talking back to me, and I've been recording it. So thingsnotseenradio.com is how you can hear that if you want to.
Awesome. And today we're talking about one of the most important topics facing today's world, which is the treatment of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi.
Yes.
Right? I mean, there is no more important topic in the world.
We were hanging out at lunch a week and a half ago, and we were having this conversation and realized that we needed to share this conversation with the world because we had strong opinions and we did not agree.
We do not agree, but, we're friends. And so it's not like a F you,
no,
I hate you and your ideas.
Not yet, anyway.
Right. It could. This could turn. This could turn ugly. This could be that last moment of ha-ha, and then suddenly it gets really awkward. You're like, oh my God, this actually did. No.
How did Matt go to the dark side? Well.
It started one fine day. All right, so we're actually going to target this pretty narrowly.
Yeah.
Could we talk about Last Jedi? Yes.
Yes.
We could do that in general, and it would be a very long conversation. We're going to keep this more about really one specific scene.
Yeah.
And it's the scene where Luke, in a moment of madness, lights up the lightsaber, thinks about killing Kylo Ren, decides better of it, but not before Kylo and misinterprets, and then all hell breaks loose.
Yeah. And the idea was, and the background for this was the overall treatment of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, and whether or not it was true to the arc of the character, I think was also where we were going with this. And in particular, the kind of sine qua non, the kind of moment of truth is that moment of when he lights up the lightsaber. Yeah.
Right. It does. It affects the narrative arc of that entire this whole trilogy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really. All right. So I'm on the side of that's not something Luke would ever do.
Okay.
And obviously you would take the counter position to that.
Well, so for one thing, we don't have one narrative of that moment. Within the movie, we've got
Rashomon
several
style.
Yeah, it comes back to that with slightly different interpretations each time for the viewer.
I kind of felt, though, like the last one was the actual event. Now, did you not feel that way?
Well, I'm interested in why you felt like the last one. What about the narrative made you think that was the true one?
It felt, I'm trying to think how it came about, but we heard it from Luke's point of view, then we heard it from Kylo's point of view, and then I'm forgetting how we were introduced to the third one.
Yeah, I don't rightly recall either.
But I feel like it was put out to us kind of by the director as like and this is how it actually went down.
Okay.
That's kind of what I got out of it. Now maybe, again, that could just be me interpreting, but, cause you didn't have the evil look on Luke's face that Kylo witnessed, and you didn't have that sense, the Luke's side of things where he was feeling a little more, I felt like in the moments leading up to the lightsaber that he was, more conflicted somehow in his interpretation. It just seemed more like he shows up, ying, wah, yeah, bring everything down. I'm making physicalizations, which probably doesn't register so well on the radio. But jing, jing, you know what that means.
Yeah.
Brings the whole place down. So, yeah, I feel like the way it went down was Kylo's asleep.
Yes.
It's late at night.
Yeah.
Luke, I guess we don't know whether he took the opportunity to read his mind or if he just walked in, but somehow he's walking up on Kylo asleep.
Yes.
Interprets. That's a good point. I'd like to know what you think on this.
Yeah.
Do you think Luke walks up on Kylo while he's asleep, kind of Jedi trick reads his mind and he says, "Oh wow," or did he already know that? Like, I've known for the last few days, this guy has been totally warped by Snoke. He's evil. And now he took that opportunity to just to walk in there. In other words, was it a last second thing of, I'll just check in on Kylo, make sure he's okay. Oh my God, he's evil. Or was it, all right, I'm going to take this opportunity now that he's asleep to do the deed. Like, what do you think on that?
I would think probably it would be the second. I mean, we're talking about the most powerful Jedi in this universe, at least at that time.
Right.
We're talking about a person who gave his father the benefit of the doubt again and again and again, multiple chances. Nevertheless, was also, and this is an important point, was willing to be in mortal combat with his father. You know, they were fighting to the death.
He was.
At one point.
Now, that said, eventually he did throw away the lightsaber.
He did.
Say, I'm a Jedi like my father. I will suffer the consequence. You can kill me if you want, but I'm not fighting you.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty, and he was shown to be correct. He was given a reward, I guess, for that decision, ultimately.
So one of the problems here is that we're dealing with multiple levels of knowledge. And if you think about like the Gene Hackman film, The Conversation.
Okay.
So in The Conversation, there's a recorded piece of data that gets played again and again. They'll kill us if they find out. And that's interpreted one way throughout the entirety of the movie. And both the viewer and the people in the movie are interpreting it one way. And then at the very end, they'll kill us if they find out. The emphasis gets shifted. And suddenly the viewer at least gets a new perspective on everything that had come before. It's not entirely clear that that's what happens with Gene Hackman, or whether the Gene Hackman character within the movie is able to finally realize that he goofed up in what he knew.
Okay.
But I feel like we're dealing with that here. So
in what way? Yeah.
Well, we as viewers are being pushed by the director to a very particular interpretation, and that's what you're talking about.
Yep.
But it's not clear to us what Luke's interpretation was in that moment, because all that we have is his reporting of the interpretation after the fact. And we know that Luke is willing, well, if Luke's a good Jedi, he's willing to dissemble. He's willing to kind of fudge the truth. I mean, because every Jedi that he's taught or learned from has faked the truth in some way.
Obi-Wan for sure, obviously.
And that's what, so we
from
have,
a certain point of view.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got some levels here, because is Luke a truth teller or is he a Jedi? Because those are not the same things.
Okay.
Yeah. And is Luke a person who is going to act on a moral code, or is he going to act like a Jedi? Because those are not the same thing.
Okay, I feel like there is a moral code to Jedi.
Okay.
It may not be the moral code that we would say like a lawful good character in a D&D setting would make.
Right. Okay. So we're going to take the youngest possible children that we can who are force sensitive, and we're going to put them into a training away from their parents, going to traumatize them. And we're going to do that because I think that there's some gray area to the Jedi Order that can be talked about in the larger sweep of these movies. Not to say that the Jedi are not the good guys in the movies. I think that they absolutely are. The Empire are the bad guys. Nevertheless, there is moral nuance to this.
Right. And we're getting a little far afield, but the idea that Anakin, one of the main reasons he just went dark was that this being pulled away from his mom.
Right.
And then Yoda even says something about that, like, oh, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hatred, hatred leads to suffering. Like they they mentioned it, we're worried about it, but still let it happen.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, well done. Say but don't do. Anyway. But yes, so I know what you mean. The Jedi aren't just everything's wine and roses and great.
But also the Jedi are very weird about familial attachments.
Yes.
And so...
And I think the reason is... Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think, at least, the reason I get out of it is that they're worried, the Jedi Order is worried, that if push came to shove, save the universe or save the person you love, you'll save the person you love, and then the universe will be destroyed or whatever.
Well, then you've just basically backed yourself into my point.
Right. I'm giving that. I'm telling you, I agree that the Jedi are not perfect.
But in that moment when he's standing over Ben, because he's Ben at that time.
He is Ben.
He is faced with that choice.
Is he, though?
This is a person who is part of my family.
Yes.
He's my nephew. He's the son of my sister and my best friend.
Yes.
Do I try and spare him, or do I acknowledge the evil that I see and act on that? given that he has the ability right now to project himself across the universe, that kind of power, that kind of sensitivity, so he can see something that we cannot see as viewers. We can at least give him that benefit of the doubt.
I will say that there are ways to deal with this situation that do not involve the incredibly cowardly, psychopathic way of killing a guy while he's in your care while he's asleep in your bed.
Help me understand why you think that is the wrong way to kill Ben.
There's a right way to kill Ben, and that's with special knives.
Well,
okay, no.
Would you rather Ben be aware that he's being killed?
Yes.
Or you would rather him be aware?
For instance, if I am a let's say I'm a good guy, I have a moral code, and I do believe that Luke has a moral code.
Yeah.
Okay. It would really, really bother me if I was like, I think that guy needs to be taken out. I'll wait till he's asleep, and then I'll kill him.
You do realize that in our society, when we execute someone for a capital crime, we put them to sleep first.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. I'm not a big fan of that either,
It's
frankly.
It's supposedly the humane thing to do.
Oh, you think he was thinking humanely?
He's a Jedi.
Wow. All right. That's a good point. I hadn't really thought of the idea of like, you know what'd be nicer? Killing him in his sleep.
I think, yeah. Otherwise, a person's going to be afraid. They're going to be, I
thought he was killing him in his sleep because he was afraid of him. That's what I get out of it. That moment of, oh my God, this guy's going to do horrible things. I'm afraid. Wing, schwank.
Ah, okay.
And so it was that fear
Yeah.
that drove him to this moment of, I think if I just kill him now, if I wait and he gets up, he could kill me.
Yeah.
I don't want him to attack me. So you know what I'm going to do? Kill him in his sleep while he's hanging out in my house.
So you think of it as a cowardly thing, not a humane thing?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
I'm way on I'm 100% cowardly, 0% humane. At this point.
Why would the director, given all the canon that we have about Luke Skywalker and the fact that he is morally brave, like willing to throw away his lightsaber in a battle with the most evil dude in the universe?
Well, no, you're getting to my point. That's exactly what I was thinking. Why would he write this character to do this? It makes zero sense. Now you're saying it would make sense if it was a humane act, is what you're saying.
Well, if we think about what it is, how does Luke treat? So because of Darth Vader, Luke was an orphan. Luke, the one familial relationship that Luke had, which was with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, the minions of Darth Vader slaughtered them. Luke had a mentor figure in Obi-Wan Kenobi. Darth Vader slaughtered him. And yet, when Luke has the chance, he treats Darth Vader, Anakin, with compassion. And even in death, he treats the body of Darth Vader with compassion, burning it and all that. Okay, so he's got tenderness and compassion, we know, in the canon. I'm going to say that it may not have been the best directorial choice, but I can get to tenderness and compassion in slaughtering someone in their sleep instead of slaughtering someone face to face. I can get there.
All right. All right. That's an interesting interpretation.
Yeah.
I will give you that I had not really thought of that as like, oh, this is a humane act. But
when Anakin killed the Padawans, they were awake. And it was horrible.
It was horrible.
The more horrible for the fact that they were cognizant of the fact that a trusted figure was slaughtering them.
They were also defenseless, and the power level was, there was zero chance they were going to survive that encounter.
Sure.
If Kylo fights Luke face to face,
yes,
and he's awake
yes.
at the time,
yes,
he's got a legit chance of surviving the encounter.
Why in the world would Luke want the most evil person in the universe to have a legit chance of getting away?
Because I feel like he feels, basically, going back to the way he's dealt with Darth Vader, that people can be redeemed. Redemption is a huge theme of Star Wars generally.
Yes.
That people can be redeemed. And I feel like the whole reason that Leia gives Kylo to the care of Luke in the first place is my kid. I think my kid is going down a dark path.
Sure.
I sense there's turmoil in this kid, and he's thinking about the dark side. But I think he can be redeemed. I need you, the most powerful Jedi in the universe, who happens to be my brother, to make sure that he stays on the right path. And let's also note this. Even as late as Force Awakens. Actually, let's get a quick timeline.
Yeah.
Just in case, most people probably know this, but just in case they don't.
I love the thought that people would be listening to this not knowing this stuff. Go ahead.
Well, in terms of how long are we talking about the period of time where Kylo's turned evil, for instance?
Yeah.
It's not that long.
Yeah.
From the books, it's a little wobbly, but it's pretty. You can get a pretty good date range.
Yeah.
And the date range is roughly in his early 20s. Somewhere in there is, let's say he's like 22, 23. He goes to this Jedi school.
Yeah.
Roughly when he's 26, 25, 26, he goes nuts, and he's about 30 by the time of Force Awakens.
Okay.
So he's about a 5-year gap between when he went, bah! And we see him in Force Awakens. Mm-hmm. But even in Force Awakens, there's a very powerful scene there where he's like, I feel the pull of the light. I'm fighting it. So he's still conflicted. Mm-hmm. And maybe you could say he's even conflicted until the moment he kills Han Solo, but he's conflicted for a good part of that movie. So that's years after this event that happened that was so I'm saying flashback 5 years to this moment where he's asleep in a bed and Luke's like, oh, I think he's evil. He's still not completely evil.
Yeah.
There is good in him. And for Luke just to go, nope, you know what I'm going to do? I feel like he's going to turn out bad. I'll just kill him now and not give him a chance to redeem himself seems, again, like not a Luke thing to do.
Okay, I'm going to ask a strange question.
Okay.
In Empire Strikes Back, when Luke is flying away in his X-Wing fighter from Dagobah,
yeah,
can Yoda see the future?
Can Yoda see the future? I don't think so.
Okay.
Because he's basically tells him don't go.
Yeah.
He's trying really hard to convince him not to go. If he
Obi-Wan
knew the future,
Kenobi
he might be like, go ahead.
Obi-Wan Kenobi cannot see the future. That boy was our last hope. No, there is another.
All right.
Who was Yoda talking about?
I assume Yoda was talking about Leia.
Okay.
In other words, we didn't know at that point.
But it's never been confirmed.
No, you're right. It's not like it's not like there's another line after it, and that other person is Leia.
Is it possible that Yoda was talking about Rey?
I don't think so, because those movies weren't even really in the hopper at that point.
Yeah, but we're talking about a canon where when we just watched Star Wars A New Hope in 1976, 1977, whenever it came out, Darth Vader being Luke's father wasn't part of the story either.
I'm just saying, I feel like also based the evidence of the fact that at the end of that movie, it's Luke reaching out to Leia, and she sensing through the Force that he needs help, and then finding him and saving his life. That echoes the idea of the other with the Force power.
If we just take two trilogies and we let the story be contained within those two trilogies, yes, I completely agree that thematically and story-wise, Leia's the right choice. But now we've expanded it to a new trilogy. And I'm going to say that that there's ambiguity in the storyline that would allow the possibility of, what is Luke supposed to do? Our last hope to do what? To kill Darth Vader? No, to balance the dark and the light. But maybe Luke has figured out that he can't be the one to balance the dark and the light, and now there is another, and it's Rey. And so he's doing all of this, including trying to kill Kylo, because he, like Yoda, another very powerful Jedi, can see the future. There are times when Yoda said, clouded the future is. So sometimes Yoda can't see the future. Okay. But sometimes, assuming that he can say that sometimes the future is clouded, sometimes the future is clear to him. Okay? And maybe there was clarity for Luke, and he was like, I can't carry this football any farther down the field. I'm going to pass it in such a way to Rey that she's going to be able to do it. Because
I'm just not, okay, so my only thought on that is you're saying if he could see the future.
Yeah.
That he thought, I'll attempt to kill Kylo, let him discover I'm trying to kill him, he'll turn evil, and as opposed to, I'll try to kill him, and hopefully I'll kill him.
Yeah, so it could be, one, okay, here's a great force of evil, I'm going to take this chance and kill him, okay? And that'll solve a problem.
But then he's not seeing the future because he didn't actually do it.
Well,
in that case.
So it's possible that Yoda can see multiple futures, and maybe Leia was the one, and now also Rey is the one.
All right.
We're talking about science fiction, so it could it could be possible.
It's all based in incredible fact. It's set in stone. There's no way it could possibly be anything. Okay. I hear you.
But if Luke realized that he could not balance the Force, but there was another who could,
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Then in order for the Force to balance,
He probably had at one point thought maybe Kylo could be that guy.
He maybe thought that Kylo could be that guy. But now maybe he's figured out that Kylo can't be that guy, but instead Kylo has to be the big lodestone of darkness against which the lodestone of light will balance. Then bring like
the dark rises or dark. I forgot Snoke's comment, but he says something like darkness rises and light rises to meet it, or something.
Yes, exactly.
That. And he's talking about.
Yeah, and so if that's the, I mean, because we still don't know how Rey fits into all this. We
do not.
And there are possibilities that Rey is not going to act like a Jedi.
Correct.
And if she doesn't, bully for her, because the Jedi's effed it up really badly.
I would say that the implication of the end of The Last Jedi is when Luke says, you everything you just said was wrong. I'm not the Last Jedi. Yeah. And blah, 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 blah. Well, by saying I'm not the Last Jedi, what he was saying is Rey is also a Jedi. I mean, I got the opinion that here's where you're wrong. Rey's a Jedi. And then we see all these people, like that ending shot with the little sweepy boy, and he looks up at the stars and he's looking at his ring. Like, you get a very reasonable hypothesis would be that at the end of the last movie, Rey would be having a new school. For instance, and she's a Jedi and she's teaching a new group of little Jedi kids. That was an implication that I got out of that last few scenes.
Why? What would make Rey so special that she could be a better teacher than Yoda or Mace Windu or anyone else? What makes us think within this story now, having now almost 10 films telling us how badly the Jedi mess up the Force every time that they try and do something with it. What makes us think that reconstituting the Jedi Order is the direction that this narrative is going?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
It could be that it's these books. She also has the books.
Yeah.
She took the texts.
Yeah.
For a reason. There's gonna be using them, I would think.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll find out that the original intent of the Jedi in the books is different from the way the Jedi were in, after thousands of years.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah. But they're like, oh, you went away from it.
Yeah.
But I guess the main reason, if I had to pick a main reason why I felt that Luke was being done a disservice was I felt that the intent of that scene. So Rian Johnson was like, look, I want to find a way to make Kylo Ren more sympathetic. How do I do it? I know, hey, he was just minding his own business at the Jedi Temple. He's being totally manipulated by Snoke. Not his fault. And then his mentor that he was trying to rely on tried to kill him, or at least in his mind, his mentor was trying to kill him, and that set him off. And so he's really just a misunderstood guy. And reasonable to try to make him a more human character, but at the expense of, I felt like there were other ways you could have made Kylo a more human character than to kind of just crap on the legacy of Luke Skywalker.
Have him save one of those little things with the big eyes as a pet.
Sure, there you go. Nice the porgs.
Yeah.
The little porg. Although, that's a good point. I don't think they're on that island or on that planet. I think after the events of this, I think Luke went on a search of discovery post that temple. We don't actually know, or at least I don't know, where that school was.
Yeah.
It's gone now. And but that's another thing too, is that at that moment, when Luke is standing with the lightsaber lit, he's running a school. He's got, I think I said 12 other students. So I would think at that point, optimistic about the future, right? I've got a school. I'm trying to help my sister's kid. I've got this. He had been doing it, I assume, for a couple of years. So he's not at the height or the depths, I should say, of despair where we find him in Last Jedi. He's actually I've got a school and I'm running it and everything's great and I'll kill this guy. Like that, the depressed, everything's horrible, the Jedi are a joke or a fake fraud version of Luke that we see in Last Jedi maybe would make that decision.
Yeah.
But that's not the Luke that was making the decision to end Kylo in his sleep. So that again can I imagine a situation where because obviously we kind of last see Luke in Return of the Jedi.
Right.
we get 30 seconds of him in Force Awakens without him talking. So I'm kind of discounting what we see of him in Force Awakens. So we see him in Return of the Jedi. Hey, I just redeemed my dad. Great. Then we see him in Last Jedi. All hope is lost. I can understand that arc could happen because like 30 years passes.
Yeah.
So yes, he could do that. I didn't see enough info that would take me from, hey, everything's great, I'm a Jedi like my father, to I'll kill this guy in his sleep. Not just this guy. It's my sister's kid, best friend's kid. I promised to look after him. I'm trying to raise him. He's in my house. I've given him permission to learn at my school. He is sleeping safe in the knowledge that I'm looking out for him. All that context of him making that decision, I just don't buy it. That's kind of where I land on that.
Well, and so then you're assuming, if I'm hearing you correctly, that the director just royally messed this up. The director and the screenwriter just royally messed this up.
Yeah, I kind of, yes.
Okay.
Even though, and when I've seen The Last Jedi a couple of times, and the first time I saw it, I enjoyed the movie. It did not ruin the movie for me. But when that scene came up, I did, even though in the midst of a movie I was otherwise enjoying, I was like, oh, but that's pretty. Like, there's some beautiful stuff happening and some really cool action scenes, and I generally liked the movie, but even in the moment, I had a little like twitch. Luke, what? I don't get it.
Yeah, well, so in off microphone, when we first had this conversation, I think I said a similar thing about Empire Strikes Back. Like as a person who completely fell in love with the universe that was self-contained in Star Wars when it was just Star Wars and not Star Wars A New Hope, when it was just that movie, the self-contained movie. When I then watched Empire Strikes Back the first time that I saw it, it was horrible. No, Luke is supposed to get together with Leia. Han's an asshole. Like, all this stuff is supposed to be
He's
this
a nerf
way.
herder.
Yeah. And so what got changed was the entirety of the trajectory, morally and otherwise, of that self-contained universe of Star Wars, when Star Wars went from being Star Wars, the standalone movie to end all time, to becoming Star Wars A New Hope as part of this story that then is continued with Empire Strikes Back.
And so for you in particular, it's it comes down to the microcosm of your outrage at the time was that they changed Leia from a love interest to a sister.
Yeah, and they changed Darth Vader from an evil dude who, black hats, white hats. Now there's gray, because now Darth Vader has a moral connection to Luke. Luke can't just go and get revenge, for the death of Obi-Wan, which, 6-7-year-old me, that made total sense. You killed the guy I liked. Now I'm going to go get you. That's the perfect setup for what should follow in a sequel. Now this is the revenge sequel, but then it gets complicated because it's not just a revenge sequel, because now it's a redemption sequel, because up until Darth Vader reveals that he's Luke's father, everything makes sense. He's going to train to go kick this guy's butt.
Yes.
And then it all gets flipped on its head. And that, I have since come to appreciate the depth of that twist and the importance of that twist for everything that follows, because that also sets up the possibility of the moral ambiguity of the Jedi Order, because the Jedis are not just the good guys anymore. The Jedis are people who will twist the truth in order for the bigger plan to come to pass. Obi-Wan doesn't care about Luke. He doesn't. He wants Luke to do exactly what Luke does in order for Luke to do what Luke does. And he gets Luke on that path. I
think there's room for both.
Yeah.
I think he could care about him and also have this agenda for him.
Well, he's been watching him for 20 years without interfering in his life. Yeah, the guy's got an agenda, and it's a creepy one.
Well, and I think I mentioned this off mic as well. It is very similar to Harry Potter. Dumbledore cares about Harry. I think we legitimately feel like, if you read the books, he cares about Harry. And yet, he has an agenda. And that agenda is Harry Potter has to die at the right time.
At the right
way.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, build up the situation so that happens.
Yeah.
And I ain't telling him.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, that is creepy. And, but I do feel like he cares about him.
Let me then ask you a question, because this is an important thing. Do the Jedi arise by the force of the will of those who become Jedi? or does the Force create the Jedi?
No. Now, I'm not a big midi-chlorians fan.
Nor am I.
I'm really glad they haven't brought that up again lately.
Yeah.
In the midi-chlorians version, I think the midi-chlorians seem to decide who gets the Force and who doesn't. And I really hope that's not a thing anymore.
Sure.
So I guess it's more of they are making decisions to theoretically balance the universe or something.
Yeah, I think that's a very important question, because if it's not a matter of the will of those that become Jedi, and I mean, so let's say that all the Jedi are wiped out, would the Force create the Jedi again? Or are the Jedi already a deficient attempt to interact with the Force, and there's a better way to do it?
Maybe you're also saying, is it some kind of divine gift, or are they just space cops?
Yeah. Yeah. And more to the point, the authorization to be space cops, does that come from something greater than themselves? Or is that simply that they have a power and they've managed to make this kind of institution around that power?
I think you could pick lines of dialogue that would support either position.
I know. And so I'm asking you, Matthew Rice, which interpretation you hold to.
I do see, the idea of the Force binds us together. It surrounds us. It feels like it's this, whether we tap into it or not, it's there.
Okay.
And certain people can tap into it, but it exists independently of the people who might wield its power. So I guess it transcends the Jedi.
So the Force might exist with no one understanding what it is.
Correct.
Okay. And so why then was there an Order of Jedi in the first place?
I suppose it was so that people could live more in harmony with the Force, perhaps. You know, like, hey, if we can.
So some people discover the power and then they create an institution to help them understand and harness the power.
I think that's true, yeah.
Okay. All right. And the Force is not volitional in this at all. The Force doesn't look at this in any kind of way and say, yes, that's a good idea. I will allow that to happen and I will support that and it's happening.
Assuming they're not little creatures, little microscopic creatures that are like,
yeah, but the Force has,
yes,
given like the
it
way
can be wielded. It's not innately good or evil.
Okay.
I would think maybe it's, we're talking science, for instance. Is
let's
science innately good or evil? It depends on how it's wielded.
That's a good analogy. But let's look at just the way that it gets described to Luke in the first movie. It's a force, so it controls your actions. And he says not completely, but it also obeys your commands. And so there's a it's kind of like a symbiote in some way, that interacts with
Venom. All right, sorry.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Okay.
But what is it then that would allow? Why would the Force allow the dark side to exist?
I got you. If it's in its control.
Yeah.
I feel like it's not in its control.
Okay.
I feel like people have free will.
Okay.
And so I think there are people that have the willpower to use the power of the Force for their own ends.
Okay.
And that it's not just I'm a puppet and the Force has decided to use me as dark side guy.
Okay.
I think that's the intent of this story.
And so it's important to you that Anakin was in control of his actions at all times.
Yes.
Okay.
I feel like I'm going into a trap here, but yes, I'll say yeah.
No trap. I'm just.
Okay. I'm in.
I'm trying to figure out
prison bars.
Trying to figure out how you think about these things.
Okay.
And so Anakin was choosing the whole time, and so Anakin is culpable for his actions as Darth Vader because it wasn't that he was in the thrall of the Emperor. Instead, he was legitimately choosing at every point to go to the dark path.
Yeah, and in fact, it's funny because there was always a part of me that thought, yeah, he at the very end, decides to kill the guy who's trying to kill his son.
Yeah.
Does that really make up for what he did? I say no, actually. I don't think it. If the story didn't tell me he's redeemed, I wouldn't think that guy's redeemed.
Yeah.
Because he did a lifetime from his teenage years for 20 years. For 20 years, he did horrible, universe level destructive things.
Yes.
At the very end, he saved his son by killing a guy.
Yes.
And he's redeemed.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, I mean, if you put it in like a religious context, he goes to heaven, right? Yeah. He has a ghost form. The Sith don't get ghost forms because they don't go to heaven-ish.
Yeah.
And so I guess in some ways, and you're more of a religious scholar than I am, but I guess that goes in the idea of it's never too late, right? It's like you can be evil all your life, but if you can repent, at that, there's never too late to repent. And so I guess that's the idea that comes through there. But if you just put it on the scale of like, here's your horrible things, here's your good things, like that scale was way off in the terms of Darth Vader.
Now, if you could have, or if someone could have interrupted Anakin before he did all those horrible things, knowing that those horrible things would happen and that he would choose to do those horrible things, would the person be legitimately justified in...
See, now we're kind of in like Minority Report territory.
Sure.
Of like, pre-crimes. We can precognitively decide you're guilty.
We know that at least one character in this universe can see some of the future some of the time. Clearly. At least one, and maybe more.
Yeah, that path, just as a human being, sounds totally abhorrent to me.
Okay. Killing
people off for crimes they haven't yet committed.
Sure.
I don't agree with it. I don't think I ever would.
Sure.
And it is you're right, it's part of the things that I take in as a human being when I see Luke preemptively killing Kylo for crimes he hasn't committed, because he hasn't committed crimes
exactly
at that point.
Exactly. But if we follow the logic of what you've just said, Anakin is not a slave to the Emperor. No. Anakin chooses every single one of the bad things that he does.
Well, because the Emperor gives him this little cherry. Hey, look, I can bring people back from the dead.
Yeah.
Somebody dies. I know. You got... Anyway.
And Snoke, but yet you've bought into the idea that Ben is in thrall to Snoke and is not in control of his actions.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So what's the difference?
Okay. Good point. I guess I'm using that comment that Luke makes where he's like... Kylo, I saw that, I forgot the exact line, but Snoke had already had such a huge influence on him. Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah.
What does that mean? You're right. And it's a good point.
Had Snoke offered Ben a cherry of some sort that was equivalent to the cherry that was offered to Anakin to get him to do all the things that he did in the hope that he would get some kind of reward?
That's a good point. The implication is that there is some kind of sorcery going on, but because it's from a distance as well. Like Snoke isn't even there.
I'm going to argue as we get through this that Anakin is not as bad as Ben is at that point when he pulls the lightsaber.
Whoa.
I'm going to argue that.
I don't, because again, all we know. I mean, we could guess that he's done some things that probably tipped off Leia. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. He killed a kitten or so. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like he did something, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
But he hadn't blown up a planet, for instance.
No, not yet.
I don't think he'd blown up a planet yet.
No. Technically, though, Grand Moff Tarkin was the one that blew up the planet.
That's true. So Grand Moff Tarkin blew up the planet. Good point. That's where you're going to defend Darth? Okay.
No, I still think Darth did horrible things.
Okay. All right. But so, real quick. I just feel like whether it is, and that's a good point. It is a good point that do you give Kylo free will? That's best case scenario. Let's give him his own free will, and he was choosing to go dark.
Yeah.
He had not yet done horrible things as a Sith or whatever.
Sure.
He wanted to be his granddad.
Sure.
And so to make that decision of, I'm pretty sure based on my Jedi abilities that this guy's going to kill Han Solo.
Sure.
I'm just going to kill him now in his sleep. I don't see it. It's not a thing.
I'm going to lay out my cards.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. It's really, really, really bad in the world that we live in to be a Nazi. It is infinitely worse to be a neo-Nazi.
Okay.
To be a person who looks at all that the regime that the Nazis created did and to say, yeah, that looks cool. Because you get to see the end game and you still want to start
Right. You want to go back to that time.
You want to dip your foot into that pool. I'm going to say that morally, it's infinitely worse to be a neo-Nazi than a Nazi, and it's infinitely bad to be a Nazi. Okay. But it's really, really bad to be a Nazi. Okay. So we know at this point in the story what the Empire means.
I see what you're saying.
We know what the dark side means. If anybody in the universe would know the moral cost of even flirting with the dark side, it would be Ben Solo. If anybody would. And yet, he chooses it. He chooses to be a neo-Sith in the same way that someone who now chooses to be a neo-Nazi, even just making that choice is morally repugnant on an infinite level because you know where it leads. You know what the end game is. All right. So at that point, you've already chosen. If in our world, the meat world that we live in, someone on this side of history chooses to be a neo-Nazi, they're choosing the ovens even if they haven't put anyone into it yet. Ben is choosing the destruction of planets, the slaughter of innocents, even if he hasn't done any of those things yet.
I hear you. And actually, something onto your point, which you may not be aware of, in the book, I think it's called Bloodlines. There's the book that kind of does
I don't know the book, but yeah.
It's Kylo's youth.
Yeah.
And Leia with young Kylo, kind of right before she sends him off to Luke. Mm-hmm. Everything's still kind of hunky-dory. Kylo's still Ben. I'm just Ben, just a guy. There is a moment in time, I think it's late teens, I think, for Kylo. Kylo, actually, the universe, the galaxy has not been told that Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. And there comes a time when, to kind of her Leia's political enemies, she's like in the Senate, and her political enemies decide, hey, let's ruin her reputation by going, hey, by the way, everybody, we just found this out. Her dad, most evil guy everybody hates. And so that comes out. And so not only is that like a huge, like, whoa, but also Kylo has this thing of, you never told me. Mm. And so there comes from a place of, my parents knew this all along and just never told me my true heritage. Mm. And so that hurt, I think, is also part of what this, like, reaching out to this grandfather figure. I mean, I think that's the start of his neo-Nazi phase, perhaps, is this idea of, wait, my grandfather wasn't so bad, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure where that comes in, but it's the anger at the parents translates into this wanting to recapture the glory of his grandfather, I guess. I don't know. But but I hear you.
But in Germany, I mean, there are scholars that work on this, Opa war kein Nazi. So my grandfather wasn't a Nazi. The kind of redemption of those that actually were fellow travelers with the Nazi movement, to try and rehabilitate them within the family. So, I mean, given the fact that we know that the Empire was founded in a large, visibly founded, Lucas intentionally pulled from the Third Reich.
Stormtroopers.
Not just stormtroopers, but in terms of the uniforms
logos
and everything else, the whole look and feel was designed to evoke the idea of the Third Reich. It's not too far to sort of reach to get to these kinds of problems. The same kind of familial problems that we have, with people trying to rehabilitate the Third Reich and choosing to become neo-Nazis because of it. We've got that going on with Ben. And it's interesting that throughout our conversation, you keep referring to him as Kylo Ren and not as Ben at these moments of choice, because you're telling me, oh, he's good, but you keep referring to him as his evil self.
You're right. No, he is Kylo Ren to me. It's true. Yeah.
But if he's the one choosing this throughout, and he's not under the control of something that's making him choose, which is your position. I'm not sure that, I think that there's an argument to be made that maybe the Force, both in its light and dark sides, has more control over us than we think.
Right, and there is the fact that, for instance, Snoke, we know from The Last Jedi that he has the power to help Rey and Kylo have a psychic connection over an entire galaxy distance. Which is pretty freaking powerful.
Yeah, and where have we seen this before? We've seen this with Luke and Leia.
Sure.
Okay. But we really haven't seen it anywhere else in that universe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so already there's that parallel, like the two times that we've seen this, like there's a very important connection between a person who is a Jedi and a person who chooses not to be a Jedi, and a person who chooses now to be kind of a Sith, and a person who chooses, we don't know yet what Rey's choice is going to be with regard to all of this. But I still hold out hope that Rey will not reconstitute the Jedi Order. I really hope the Jedi don't come back because I think the Jedi effed it up.
Okay.
I really do.
You feel like there's more like a gray Jedi, perhaps, or like a neutrality, maybe, or I could be misstating what the gray Jedi are.
Yeah, an entirely different way of approaching this because I think I still want to give Luke the benefit of the doubt. I think that Luke was more powerful and more smart in The Last Jedi than we've ever seen him be before, and that the level that he attained allowed him a vista to see everything that had gone wrong. I mean, the Jedi are not the protectors of moral sagacity. They're not the protectors of wisdom. They're not the protectors of truth. They twist wisdom, they use wisdom, and they twist the truth in order to achieve a political end. Okay? And that's not what we were originally shown the Jedi to be in the very first movie. Star Wars later became Star Wars A New Hope. 7-year-old me still believes that there's a moral core to the Jedi.
I mean, I kind of felt like the original intent of them before maybe the prequels started really going into politics.
They were like the Knights Templars.
But they were warrior monks. They were samurai, perhaps, something like that.
But now every movie since then has undermined that myth and has shown us instead Ben Kenobi as a dissembling jerk. He's willing to twist the truth for his purposes.
Jerk's a little harsh, but
it's a little harsh from a certain point of view.
Oh, Ben, you're knocking Ben now. All right, just start a new video.
If Ben had always,
what have you done to Ben?
If Ben had always told the truth and then had gotten killed, that would be one thing. But Ben flat out lied to Luke, and only when he came back as a Force ghost was like trying to make it right. You told me that Darth Vader killed my father. Well, that's true from a certain point of view. Well, that's not true. I'm Catholic. That's kind of like what the Jesuits do. They'll use the truth to kind of help. No knock on the Jesuits, but it's a similar kind of thing where you've got this moment of Ben could have given Luke all the information that Luke needed to make a really informed moral choice, but instead Ben began to set up just then the revenge narrative.
Right. He basically is like, I need you to be against Darth Vader.
Yeah.
I don't want you to have sympathy for Darth Vader.
No.
So let's say he killed your dad.
And then I'm going to martyr myself so that now the emotional connection that we have is going to push you even farther to do this.
The other thing he didn't tell him, did he ever tell him? And by the way, when he was your dad, I basically killed him.
Yeah.
Like, I cut his legs off.
Yeah.
I don't think that ever came up.
It never came up. Yeah. I don't know that Luke knows that to this day.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Unless Luke can see things that we...
Sure.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But here's the thing. Is it possible that Ben Kenobi was trying to push Luke to the dark side in order to force the rebalancing of the universe?
So you're in the opinion that there is this, like the independent of people's notions that there is this, like, if you've got a really strong dark side, you're going to have a really strong light.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so we know Darth can be turned. But why is Ben Kenobi from the very first time that he's talking to Luke, why is he not giving Luke the truth, but instead he's giving Luke a lie that will make Luke want to have revenge? And why is he setting it up so that he will die in a way that will make Luke want to go and get revenge? It's not because of anything that Ben Kenobi gave to Luke that Luke chooses to do the right. It's because there's something else in Luke that is pushing him to be the light.
And so maybe to bring it back to the Ben Kylo thing, what you're saying is like Snoke it's possible that instead of just like sorcery manipulation, that he's tricking him. Mm-hmm. He's giving him just enough information to like push him in a certain direction that it was Snoke's agenda. Now Snoke, at least so far as we know, is dead, but the damage is done.
Yeah.
Kylo is Kylo now. And so that maybe instead of like just a blink, you're now a robot. To me, it's blink. I've tricked you into doing what I want. And you've now, whether you realize it or not, you just fell into this path.
It takes a little push on the boulder at the top of the mountain. But by the time the boulder's midway down the mountain, it's got a lot of momentum.
There is something I always laughed at, even back in the prequels.
Yeah.
When the Emperor Palpatine is seducing Anakin, and he's talking about the dark side and how, hey, it's not really that bad. But it's just funny that it's still called the dark side. Like, you would think if you were trying to be like morally ambiguous about it, you'd call it something else than the dark side, which is automatically you're like, I wonder, is the dark side like, no, it's the happy unicorn side. I don't know. It's just the naming, the marketing of the dark side seems like it has a problem right off the bat.
It does, doesn't it?
To be able to not fall for it.
Yeah,
well, it seemed like they fell for it anyway.
You would think in the meat world that we live in that Nazi would be enough to turn people off of going down that path.
Yeah.
And yet,
no.
So some people, if a person thinks that kind of stuff is sexy, then calling it that is going to be,
enticing.
Yeah. So in the Netherlands, they have a brand of cigarettes called Death. And they've got a big skull on it. It's
tell you what it is.
Yeah, and it literally says, "This will kill you." And people smoke them because they like the sexiness of,
tempting fate.
Exactly. So, I mean, we haven't solved anything here. No, but this has been a heck of a lot of fun.
It is enjoyable, and maybe part of this as well will be resolved with how Kylo's story gets resolved.
Yeah.
Episode 9 will inform a lot about what Luke's choice was.
Yeah.
Is it a redemption story for Kylo? Obviously, if Darth Vader could be redeemed, there's probably still room for Kylo to be redeemed. Doesn't seem like it at this point, but maybe.
Yeah.
Is it just he's the villain now that Snoke's dead and he has to be done away with? What? So in other words, whatever trajectory Kylo takes from here, I think makes that choice by Luke either maybe a better light or worse light. I'm
really sad though that we never got more about Snoke. Like, he's been this manipulator, but we don't know anything about him at all. Like, he's just this. He's the MacGuffin. Like Hitchcock would say, he's making all this action happen, but there's no substance there. Right.
I mean, to put it into the original trilogy terms, if the Emperor had been killed off in Empire Strikes Back, what is that story then? Is Darth Vader the villain then?
Yeah.
Like you've gotten rid of that, the third party that is worse than anyone else.
Yes.
And so, I mean, again, which makes me think maybe they find a way to bring, if Snoke was that powerful, maybe his spirit is, he's his own spirit ghost or,
and so
whatever.
Where was Snoke during the Empire? Was Snoke?
He's an ancient being, so he was around.
Okay.
When in the Bloodlines book, there's a passage where when Leia's pregnant with Kylo, she feels like a dark presence trying to invade her womb or something. And so the implication is, or the people think that that's somehow Snoke was aware. There's it's a Skywalker. I want that. So if he was around then, he's been around. Also, and what was he doing? He's in the outer reaches or the unknown reaches.
This is the thing that I hate about the movies is why is it so important, this one family?
Right. And it makes the universe so small.
It really does. Yeah. And why do we have to have the droids in every film? Why do R2-D2 and C-3PO have to show up like that? Just let them have their own trajectories. Like that it bothers me. It bothers me.
The Skywalkers scenario where everything revolves around the Skywalkers does bother me.
Yeah.
The droids in some ways doesn't bother me because I feel like they are emblematic of this universe where you can be immortal as a robot. And it's only the robots that get to witness everything through time, maybe? I don't know.
So let me ask you another question. Is R2-D2 force sensitive?
I mean, I would say no, but then, R2-D2 seems to have been around at the very pivotal moments of history.
Yes.
Found a way to manipulate, apparently, the circumstances. You could make that case.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
But do we have other examples of a droid that is force sensitive?
Yeah, I don't think so.
I mean, General Grievous isn't really.
No.
I don't know that we've got force sensitive. If you're out there and you know of a force sensitive droid, feel free to let us know. But I feel like maybe that's where they draw the line, where it's like you can be a different alien race.
Yeah.
You can be, whatever. But if you're a robot I don't know that you then can tap into the Force.
If midichlorians are essential to the Force, then you're absolutely right, because there's nothing organic in a droid that could interface with a midichlorian. But if midichlorians are a crock of crap,
please let them be a crock of crap.
And instead the Force is what we always knew it to be, which is to be this great spiritual field, and it's mystic, and it doesn't require, it doesn't require meat to
Flesh
operate.
And blood, right.
Yeah, but instead it can permeate and manipulate all things.
Because if your question is R2D2 conscious?
Yeah.
I think probably yes.
Okay, interesting.
I mean, I feel like R2D2 makes moral choices.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
So yeah, in that situation, I suppose he could maybe, if it's just a conscious being, can tap into a field.
Yeah. So if the Force doesn't interface with droids, then how is it possible that with the blast shield down, Luke could sense the laser droid, the drone that he was sparring with in New Hope? But he could.
Right. I was interpreting it as he could see objects moving in space.
Interesting. Okay.
Like he could feel the movement of objects.
Okay.
In like a web. It's like a network, and as things move through that network, they create somehow some kind of ripples. Or something.
Oh, I love that image. I'd never thought of it that way, but I love that image. That's really powerful. Okay, in that case, yeah, I'm still on the fence about R2D2. But
that could be a discussion for another time.
It could be.
We have actually many. Apparently, we can talk about this all day. We just did, but we can talk more about it. I'd love to talk more Star Wars topics with you.
Please, because this is the thing. This kind of nerdy talk, I don't get a chance to do it enough with anybody but my wife, and nobody else gets to hear that because it's usually like at 10 o'clock at night. But I'd love to have the chance to talk to you more about this.
Boom, you're on, sir.
Cool.
In this awesome setting, we'll be back. We're gonna do more Star Wars stuff.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, sir. You were awesome. Didn't convince me, but you were awesome.
Same here.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye. All right. That's it.
That's it.
How do we feel?
That was awesome.
Good.